Are we ready?
Yes, we are.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you all so much for being here. This is one of these traditions that we have started a few years ago. The Ackerman Center, of course, is the Ackerman Center for Holocaust Studies at the School of Arts and Humanities. And every year we commemorate Holocaust Remembrance Day, as is observed in the whole world, Yom HaShoah. And this year it will be on April 8th. And so since 2016, we have always selected a Holocaust poem for us to translate into as many languages as possible, because very early on we realized that we had such a wealth of languages amongst our students and our staff and our faculty. And so this is when we began to do these poems, and this very quickly emerged into a long-standing tradition where we translate the poems, and then on Holocaust Remembrance Day, and I'm just showing here on the slides in front of you our website, ackerman.utdallas.edu, where you can actually click on news and events, and then if you go to Holocaust Remembrance Day, you can actually see the many iterations of this program that we have done in previous years. Last year, of course, was the first year that we did this virtually. So it happened right around the same time that we transitioned to online teaching because of the pandemic. And so we got together in this virtual setting, and we translated one of Radnoti's Hungarian poems into as many languages as possible. And then we showcased our translations on Holocaust Remembrance Day last year. And from the years before that, when we could be together in person, we would, of course, host these events where everybody could just walk up and read poems and read short stories about in memory of the Holocaust. And we have also the videos from those previous years. So I'm just showing this for all of you who are here with us. If this is your first year and you're curious to see what we have done in the past, I would love to invite all of you to take a look at our website and listen to the poems that we have done in previous years. Now, this year we have selected one of the most incredible of Holocaust poems by Primo Levi. And I am so happy to have here with us Professor Patterson, who is the Hillel Feinberg Distinguished Chair in Holocaust Studies, who will talk to us about the meaning of this poem, as well as a little bit about Primo Levi and the importance of the poem. And then once Dr. Patterson talks to us about this, we will break into groups, into language groups, where we'll spend some time together with the members of our group talking about the poem, perhaps starting to do a bit of translation today. But this is also meant to be an exercise that will continue after this point. Because as I said, let me just pull up here the slide with the date. The idea is for us to work on our translations and then to have them ready for the display and the showcase on April 8th. And so this is a little bit of the idea here of what we're doing. And so without much further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Professor Patterson. And thank you all once again for being here.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll keep this brief, but there are a few important points to be made about Primo Levi as well as about the poem. You can see his dates: born in 1919, committed suicide in 1987. Primo Levi was, as you can see from his dates, a young man, already a trained chemist, when he was arrested in December 1943 for being part of a French Italian resistance group. He thought that if he had presented himself as a Jew and not as a resistance fighter, it might go a little more easy, might be easier for him. But of course, That was not the case. So he was sent to Auschwitz in January 1944, where he ended up in Buna, or Monowitz, also known as Auschwitz III, where Elie Wiesel was as well. Because he was a chemist, he was able to obtain work indoors, which went a long way towards saving his life. And Primo Levi, it's a long lecture on him, which I won't go into, but the title of his memoir, written actually shortly after the war, like 1945 or 6, took him 10 years to find a publisher for it, is Se questo è un uomo. Is this a human being? That's the question that the Holocaust, for Levi and for Elie Wiesel, for that matter, is about. What is a human being? What determines the dearness of a human being, the sanctity of a human being? So that's the context for this. And of course, the poem Shema appears on the page right before his text of his memoir. Also, it's worth reading a line from his preface, which appears right before the poem. Okay, he says, many people, many nations can find themselves holding, more or less wittingly, that every stranger is an enemy. For the most part, this conviction lies deep down like some latent infection. It betrays itself only in random, disconnected acts and does not lie at the base of a system of reason. But when this does come about, when the unspoken dogma becomes the major premise in a syllogism, then at the end of the chain, there is the lager, the camp. And so after this, he follows with the poem. In the memoir, he doesn't include the title. Interestingly, Shema. The title, of course, is a Hebrew word, Shema, which means hear, heed, understand, pay attention. It's a word that implies a summons to a testimony or a mission of some kind. It's the name of probably the most important prayer that a Jew says. It means hear. It's the hear, O Israel. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And it's a prayer that we say twice a day. It's based on the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6, verses 4 through 9. Is the first paragraph. There are 3 paragraphs of it. So there are a few lines in the poem that are taken directly from the prayer. The prayer is a summons. It is a warning, is an outcry, and the poem is itself a kind of prayer. Elie Wiesel has said that, like prayer, poetry is the substance of language and the language of silence. Primo Levi was profoundly sensitive to the Nazi assault on language, on the word, on tearing meaning from the word. And those of you who know his memoir see that sensitivity and will be taken by what I call, these Levi-esque phrases, like the monotonous horror of the mud, or everyone was ferociously alone. I mean, Levi has a brilliant way with language. Starting with this poem. Finally, he ends the poem with a variation on a curse from the Torah and from the prophets. The curse, the worst possible curse that can befall the Jewish people, is that God will turn his face away from us. The greatest blessing, the first line in the priestly blessing from the book of Numbers, chapter 6, verse 24 is, may God shine his face upon you. Okay, now Levi takes it to the children. May your children turn their faces from you. That's his curse, but it's a play on the curse of the prophets, the curse in the Torah. As to whether Levi was a religious man, he was like all Jews. He learned and he read the Bible in his upbringing. He went to Hebrew school. He was much more, as an educated man, steeped in the Western classical tradition and in the sciences, as compared to Elie Wiesel, for example, who was a Hasidic Jew. Levi was far from that. But Levi writes and talks like a religious man. Levi says he didn't pray in Auschwitz because their prayer would be blasphemy. He said in an interview on one occasion that he said I can't believe in God. It's impossible for me because I can't see God and Auschwitz in the same reality. But he wanted desperately to believe in God. He just couldn't. I mean, it made him insane in some ways. I didn't know him personally, but I have friends who knew him personally. Alvin Rosenfeld, for example, was very close to him. And so I have it on secondhand that he talks like a religious man. He has the conviction of a religious man. He has the urgency of a religious man. And he titled one of his most important poems after the name of a prayer, Shema. So that's what we have before us. We can go on from here.
Yes. Should we go ahead and read the poem? I can read the Italian, and then you could read the English, and then we can.
Why don't you read the Italian? Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So this is Shema, and as Professor Patterson said, this was written on January 10th of 1946, so shortly after his liberation from Auschwitz. It is Shema. Voi che vivete sicuri nelle vostre tipie case, voi che trovate tornando a sera il cibo caldo e visti amici, considerate se questo è un uomo che lavora nel fango, che non conosce pace, che lotta per mezzo pane, che muore per un sì o per un no. Considerate se questa è una donna, senza capelli, senza nome, senza più forza di ricordare, vuoti gli occhi e freddo il grembo come una rana d'inverno. Meditate che questo è stato. Vi comando queste parole e scolpitele nel vostro cuore, stando in casa, andando per via, coricandovi, alzandovi. Ripetitele ai vostri figli. O vi si svacia la casa, la malancia vi impedisca, i vostri nati torcano il viso da fuori. And now perhaps we should also read the English. Professor Patterson, would you like to read the English? And I think you're muted again. Let me just try to. Yeah, I think you have to unmute yourself. Sorry.
Got it. Okay. This is the English. You who live safe in your warm houses, you who find returning in the evening hot food and friendly faces, consider if this is a man who works in the mud, who does not know peace, who fights for a scrap of bread, who dies because of a yes or a no. Consider if this is a woman without hair and without name, with no more strength to remember, her eyes empty and her womb cold like a frog in winter. Meditate that this came about I commend these words to you. Carve them in your hearts, at home, in the street, going to bed, rising. Repeat them to your children. Or may your house fall apart. May illness impede you. May your children turn their faces from you. Now, from the time he says, I commend these words to you, carve them in your hearts, at home, in the street, going to bed, rising, repeat them to your children. Those lines are directly from the prayer, the Shema. Shinantam levenechem, v'dibata bam b'shivtecha b'vatecha, uv'lektecha b'derech, uv'shachbecha u'kumecha. Straight, I mean, right, these are the words from the prayer.
Thank you very much, Professor Patterson. And I see that there is a lot of messages here in the chat. We have different ideas. That's a really great idea. Katie wants to translate this into a visual translation using silent black and white clips. That's a really great idea. And what we will do now, and I see that there are more of you who have joined us, so thank you all so much for being here. What I would like, for those of you who haven't already done so, please add in the little chat which language you will be translating into, and we're getting ready to split into groups in just a moment. I see we have a hand up here. Amel, please go ahead. You have to unmute yourself, Amel.
I have a question for Dr. Patterson.
Yes, please.
Dr. Patterson, what shall we do with the title in translation?
I would keep it as Shema, whatever language you're translating into. Why? That wonderful, excellent question. Because the Hebrew word embodies the soul of the people of Israel. The Hebrew language is the holy tongue. This is what is coming under the radical assault. In the assault on the sanctity of the human being, it's an assault on the Holy One in whose image the human being is created in. It's an assault whose language is Hebrew. The Nazis burned Hebrew Bibles in Hebrew, not Bibles in German or any other language. Bibles in Hebrew they burned. There was an assault on the Hebrew itself. So this Hebrew title has metaphysical, if not theological, dimensions and implications. So I would keep the Hebrew title.
Thank you. I agree.
Are there more questions?
Yes, I'm lost this morning. Where is the chat function? Everything has changed.
On the right-hand side of your screen, there should be 4 icons. One that looks like a bubble is the chat function.
On the right-hand side. Open, collaborate. Okay, there it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. All right. Any questions before we break into groups? And I do realize as I'm looking here that, some of the groups we do have one single person for the language group. And what I would like to invite all of you to do is to, invite your friends, your students, your classmates to join you in this effort as well. We do have this room until 12. And so, you're more than welcome to stay here and to work together in your groups. And then we will be, of course, in communication via email. And then to also be sure, like I already mentioned here, that we have our poems ready to go, our translations, so that we can showcase them on our virtual event on April 8th. Okay? All right, and so let me just go ahead now and break everyone into groups. I will come around the groups just to, talk to you and meet each one of you. So just bear with me here for just a moment, and we'll try to do this as smoothly as possible, okay? Hi, everybody. I'm bringing everybody back into the main room. Sorry, this is a
Yeah.
little weird process. If you guys just bear with me for 1 minute. We're just trying to figure out a date and time. That's perfect. Let's see here what's going on. Let me try to okay. All right, so I just wanted to bring everybody back into the room. I know some already had to leave, but I wanted to once again just thank everybody for being here. Hopefully you had a good time together, translating this poem and talking about the poem. And I hope that you will continue to work together. This is not meant to be, you have a final translation already done today. This is rather supposed to be a process that we would, ideally meet more times. But again, with this digital situation, it's a little bit more complicated than that. But I would just recommend exchange emails, be in touch with one another. And then I will also send out an email discussing about the actual Holocaust Remembrance Day, and then with time slots when you would be able to read the poem, recite the poem. So I will be in touch with all of you about this. And I just wanted to once again thank you all for being here and see if there are any questions or any comments, any concerns, to also give everybody a chance to maybe address that before you leave today. And if not, you all have my email. Oh, I see a hand. Mel, please go ahead, dear Mel.
Is the recording of Dr. Patterson's presentation available to us?
It will be. So I am recording the session. Once we finish it, I will just cut a few things, but I will make that available, and I can send it via email as well.
Perfect. Thank you, because he gave a really good introduction to the poem.
Yes, he's wonderful. He's amazing.
Thank you, Sarah.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. All of you have my email. You can email me with any questions or anything. And I look forward to the next time that we're together again, which should be on April 8th. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you all. Stay safe and be well. Thank you. Bye-bye.